Let's talk money.
I don't have your money.
I know I'd be a lot happier with some extra cash.
Is this about money?
Obviously, this is all about money.
Oh, man, we got bills to pay, buddy.
With practical tips and a focus on Scripture, let's talk money. With Dave and Reb. From More Than Enough. Real conversations about money for real people. Let's talk money.
Are you ready to talk money, Reb?
I'm ready to talk money.
It's just you and I again in the show. And of course, all of you who are listening, thank you for joining us. Today's show is sponsored by More Than Enough. That is the financial coaching company that Reb and I run together with all of the wonderful people who help us do that. We may be at the point of the spear, but boy, there's an awful lot of beautiful, wonderful people that are on the journey with us here at More Than Enough. So thank you to you for listening, to the people that are on the journey with us at More Than Enough. And wow. Let's talk money, Reb.
I know today is just a fun show because I just get to ask Dave questions and he's going to answer based on your questions. So at our office, our lovely Debbie calls you if you're a mortgage client of ours, and every year we'll ask you how you're doing, ask you a few questions, and ask, do you have any questions for the podcast? So I pulled out a few of those from the last few months, and I'm going to talk to Dave, and he's going to give us his ideas about those answers. But before we do that, I want to read from James 1, because I was thinking about James writing to the church and saying, you know, when you need wisdom, all you have to do is ask, because God just gives abundantly without favor. He just gives wisdom, and we just have to believe that we'll receive it. So I went to the Message kind of translation, or however that Eugene Peterson wrote, and I was actually, when I read the verses, I was thinking about last week's show as well. So if you tuned into last week's show, these are very applicable. Consider it a sheer gift, friends, when tests and challenges come at you from all sides. You know that under pressure, your faith life is forced into the open and shows its true colors. So don't try to get out of anything prematurely, and that might include financial pressure. Just saying, that's Reb's addition there. Let it do its work so you can become mature and well-developed, not deficient in any way. If you don't know what you're doing, pray to the Father. He loves to help. You'll get his help and won't be condescended to when you ask for it. Ask boldly, believingly, without a second thought. People who worry their prayers are like wind-whipped waves. Don't think you're going to get anything from the Master that way, adrift at sea, keeping all your options open. It's you can go and read it in any other translation as well, but I just like some of the words Eugene Peterson uses. You know what? If you don't know what you're doing, ask God for help. So this is what primarily is the source of our wisdom. And I'm going to ask Dave some of the questions you asked, but we know that...
And I'm going to ask the Lord
I know.
to give some wisdom.
Right, because, I mean, honestly, this has been a journey where we haven't known a lot, and the Lord has had to teach us along the way, and some really wise people come alongside of us and help us. So, and we're hoping that we can offer that wisdom to you, so...
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why we so often read a scripture when we enter the podcast is that, to be honest, I'm not really that smart. And those of you that know me personally know that I'm not really that smart. But as we look at the Lord and as we surround ourselves with godly people or with people that are that are experts in different things, we can pick that up and we can say, okay, this is in fact, a word from the Lord, a wisdom from the Lord, and then we can, again, the challenge always is in our world to apply that and say, how do we take that knowledge and apply it to our life, and it becomes wisdom.
Well, and of course, one of the first questions we're going to start with is insurance and coverage, and why is it important to have life insurance specifically? And of course, you can't go to the Bible or the dictionary or any, and say, or, Bible's encyclopedia and say, where does God talk about life insurance? Because if we look at it in context of what Jesus said, we might not get life insurance. However, it is an option in our culture, and we are going to talk about that for a few minutes.
Sure. So a couple things to set the stage. So we've done a couple podcasts on wills, which I think is really important. It kind of falls a little bit into this. Should I have a will? Should I not have a will? My definitive yes, need to have a will. And so go back to the podcast, listen to that. We have some excellent
I'm going to
guests
put
on
that in the show notes
Sure.
because last summer we had my girlfriend on who didn't have a will, and it caused some problems.
Yeah, and so and
her.
yeah, I mean again, but we were talking about insurance
Yes.
and insurance again, some framework there is insurance, the entire industry is based on fear and the unknown, right? What if you have a car accident? What if your house burns down? What if you fall off the roof and break a leg? What if you fall off the roof and pass away? So a lot of the what ifs. So again, difficult conversations to have because there's an awful lot of fear wrapped around the what if. And so this is where we can bring our relationship with the Lord and say, yes, absolutely, I'm going to trust the Lord for my health, for my safety, all of those things. And I can personally say the number of times that I should be dead is not on one hand, but I think on two hands. I might be able to count them up on two hands. And that is just grace from God to keep me here and alive on this earth. He obviously has said, you're staying here for a little longer, Dave. When we talk about insurance, recognize that that is the perspective that this conversation revolves around. What if and the unknown. And that does create a lot of fear. Now, here's our simple rule of thumb, because we can really frame this around the now, the things that we do know. So when we're talking about insurance, first of all, we want to address if you pass away. So we're going to talk about life insurance. And again, we got house insurance, we got car insurance.
There's a lot of insurances.
And we don't have a choice with house insurance and car insurance.
No. If you
own a house and you have a mortgage, you need car insurance.
So just not car insurance, house insurance.
House insurance.
So just to clarify for anyone who's not a homeowner, when you come to get a mortgage or go to a bank to get a mortgage, that's a requirement.
Yeah. Just like when you buy a car, it is a requirement that you have car insurance.
Right.
And there's some wisdom there.
Yeah.
If you have an accident and you are at fault, let's say it's in a car and you are at fault and the other person passes away. Well, there's a liability there. Now you could get sued. And that's what your insurance company will compensate the other people for the mistake that you had. That's why we call them accidents. So, again, just recognizing that there is some wisdom inherent, even though we have to have house insurance. There's some wisdom, even if you don't have a mortgage and you think, well, if the house burnt down, do I have enough money to replace, to move to another place? Do I have enough money to rebuild? We call that self-insurance. If the answer is yes, then you have enough self-insurance. You have enough yourself to cover the insurance, then you don't need somebody else to do it and pay a premium for them to do it. Again, you can self-insure. So, again, just kind of really keeping it simple. When there is some insurance, you don't have a choice. When it comes to life insurance and disability insurance, you always have a choice. Nobody can really force you to have life insurance or disability insurance unless you're in, I will caveat that, unless you're in a specific trade. There are some jobs that will say you need to have life insurance if you do this job. So anyways, we won't go there. The vast majority of us have the choice of how much. And our rule of thumb around life and disability insurance is simply this. If you were to pass away, what would happen to your debt? What would happen with your funeral? And what would happen with the surviving family members, right? So how are those three areas going to be affected? So, our rule is that if you have debt, have enough life insurance to cover all of your debt so that you don't leave those who, when you leave this earth, there's people that are left behind, and you are going to leave them either positive or negative, right? You're going to leave them some debt. Well, that's not very great. Or you're going to leave them zero debt and maybe an extra amount of money. And we'll talk about that in the third one. So number one, take care of all your debt. Cover off all your debt with your life insurance. If you have a mortgage of $300,000, make sure you have at least $300,000 to cover the mortgage. If you've got more debt on top of that, make sure you do that. Number two, make sure you have enough, include the cost of a funeral in your life insurance policy. You can do that outside. You could pay for it ahead of time. There's lots of mechanisms there. But ask yourself the question, if I were to die, is there money to cover the funeral? Yes or no? If not, let's create a plan. And life insurance can be one of those ways to cover that. Number three is again, just going to the, and so anything else. If you're married, so Rebecca and I are married, I ask Rebecca, so how long right now, if I were to pass away, would you need to get your kind of house back in order? So go through some grieving. That might take 2 years. And then maybe there's some things that you want to change after 2 years, and so maybe you say, well, I'd like to keep the standard of living that I'm living now for 3 years. Okay, well then, Rebecca, we've paid off the mortgage with the life insurance. You've paid for the funeral with the life insurance. And now we're just going to look at our expenses, our annual expenses, minus those things, and say, okay, Rebecca, we need an extra $50,000 for the next 3 years, so $150,000. So there we go. So that we can just easily add those three things up, and then you go, that's the minimum life insurance. If you want to go higher, or if you say, well, we'd really like to leave some money to the kids. If dad passes away, then we'll leave some money for the kids. Then you can add that in. And then you balance that out against the premium. Then you go shopping and you say, I want life insurance for $500,000. It covers those three things. And now I really want to see what the best deal I can get in terms of the life insurance. And there are lots of insurance companies, so no worries that way.
So I guess I'm going to just add you a question that I think we've talked about before, and I alluded to at the beginning. What do you do in light of how Jesus lives? Like, we have these privileges to have insurance. There are a lot of places in the world that people just can't afford it. Like
Canada.
Well, there are people in Canada that can't afford life insurance, sure. Right? And we're hearing more of those stories. Anyway, what do you do? Like, how is this wisdom? Is this just, is there a way to kind of gauge it within, if a person's listening and thinking, man, am I driven by fear here? And the reason I'm thinking about it is Serena and I recently went to Niagara, went to the Shaw Festival, and saw the Prince Caspian play based on the story by C.S. Lewis. And I mean, in the book and on stage, Aslan, the Christ figure, goes to Susan, one of the children, and says, Susan, Susan, you have been making decisions based on fear. And then he breathes on her and says, now, brave one, do you have more courage to face what's coming? And she says, I think so. But it really struck me when that line popped up in the story. And is there, we don't want life insurance because we're afraid.
No, and that is the challenge. That's why I started with that framework to go, we'll have to kind of step into that conversation around insurance and really check yourself. Am I making these decisions based on fear? And that's, again, that's why we kind of have those three things. These are really hard kind of technical things that, we don't want to leave a legacy of debt. If I was to pass away, I want to make sure, if it's at all possible to me, if I pass away unexpectedly, right? It's an accident. It's insurance. If I pass away unexpectedly, then I want to make sure you're cared for. Because it is an extension of my love for you, not an extension of my fear of dying.
Right. And then because we have flexibility in our spending plan and our budgets, for some people would call them, then we can make those choices. But here's another thought I have. You know, in the stories of Scripture, we see the direction of the church, the admonition for leaders to take care of the widows who don't have family. If a widow has a family, then let the family take care of them, right? If they don't have a family, and I remember a story within the last 25 years of a homeschooling mom, husband died, and their church decided, I can't remember which church it was, but it was in Ontario somewhere. The church decided to support this lady so that she could stay homeschooling her kids and raise them. And I thought, you know, here is that direction of the Lord to be in community. In Acts, it says, so that everyone shares everything in common. And I'm like, if it was a perfect world and we as the church were doing it really well, I don't even know how you do that. But then we wouldn't have to worry about, well, if he dies and I don't have insurance, I know that I'm a part of a community that's going to make sure my needs are met. And I think that's where we have a lot of work to do, maybe.
And I think, you know, again, when we talked a little bit about first world, third world, you know, in the third world, there aren't any insurance companies. And to be honest, that's because people can't afford insurance. But there's community and people care for each other and there's generosity that happens. And we see that, I would say, much freely in a third world situation than we do in the first world.
But I mean, we don't know that for sure. Well, I'm sure
that's okay. I'm talking from my experience, right?
What you've experienced when you've, yes. Because I'm sure there are places that people who don't have community who aren't. But I mean, it's just an interesting thought. And I throw that out there because I think that's one of the reasons Jesus says we don't have to worry about
Rebecca the idealist. You've just heard Rebecca the idealist.
I know.
And yes, that is it. We all live in community. We share, and there's no need for insurance companies because, again, there's no fear. If something were to happen to you, then I know, oh, this person or that person or my, you know, in biblical terms, my brother would take you into his family. Right?
I don't want to marry your brother. But anyway, this is a little side. Anyway, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have insurance. I'm not saying, but we're just kind of throwing out these ideas. And I love the context with which you give because we do have it available to us. But on the other hand, if you don't have cash to get insurance, hopefully we are part of communities that will help us on the journey. But anyway, yes, the idealist in me. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to be that for others either, actually. Anyway, that's another story. So, okay, we got other questions. Okay. Do you want to go with a credit card question?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So the other question was, there's so many different credit cards. There's points and rewards. Do you use a credit card for the benefits of the reward system? Right. Now, saying this, we just have a Costco card, and I just got my rebate check, so we can go to Costco.
Pay for our Costco membership.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Pretty much, yes.
Okay. So here's the deal. Let's again start with some framework just to put it on, on a framework that is, a credit card is a tool. And so, using the metaphor, there's Black & Decker, there's Milwaukee, there's Ryobi, so if you walk through a hardware store, you're going to see the tool section of a hardware store.
Right.
You're going to see all kinds of different brands of tools. And those tools are all saying, we do the same thing, but we have different benefits. And so, this brand has a longer battery life and this one has more power and again, if you don't have to look too far to see there's all these comparisons between which tool is the best.
Right.
And again, you will have people very passionate about their Milwaukee tools or their Ryobi tools or their Waltz tools, right? So, people are really passionate because that's the tool that they are. I grew up, and this is why I frame it this way, because I grew up in an automotive world where the right tool and the right quality of tool was really important for me doing my job. I needed to trust that tool. I needed to make sure it was going to do what it said it was going to do. I didn't want it breaking all the time. There are lots of things. So when I bought tools, then there were certain tools that I would buy from this brand and this brand. And so, credit card is a tool. And so what we can, if we frame it that way, then we can say, okay, so what do I want the tool to do? Do I want to get points? Is that important to me? Well, then I'm going to get like a travel credit card that's going to have the travel points. Or do I want to get discount on my gas? Well, then maybe I'm going to get a card that gives me a discount on the gas. Do I want to pay for, one of the credit card companies you could buy groceries directly from? And so you say, okay, well, every time I buy groceries, I'm collecting the points and I get to buy more groceries. Is that important to me? So when you are shopping for a credit card, think of it like a tool. What do you want the tool to do? And if you want to get money back, cash back, there's lots of credit cards that will give you cash back. If you want to get points, then get the points. Couple little caveats before you jump in.
Because I'm like, are we promoting credit cards?
No, we're not. We're not at all. I should have put that up front in the framework. But here's the deal. The credit card is a tool. And, to kind of take that little side, how we use the tool is really, really, really important.
Yeah.
And Rebecca, you and I have used this metaphor many times as people ask us about the credit card.
Chainsaw.
Chainsaw
metaphor,
right?
yeah. Okay.
So, if we were to compare the tool of a credit card with the tool of a chainsaw, here's how they compare. The tool of a credit card allows you to buy things very convenient. The chainsaw allows you to cut a tree down in record time and do an amazing amount of work when compared to, say, a regular saw. So great tools have benefits. Chainsaw is very dangerous. You do need some training. You need to wear some special equipment. We want to be careful when we're using it so that we don't hurt ourselves. We don't hurt the people around us. We also, when we use the chainsaw, there is the possibility that the tree could fall on us. So we need to have our environment and how this is going to affect our environment. Same exact things with a credit card. Credit card can be used appropriately in a way that actually allows you to conveniently buy stuff. If you pay it back on a regular basis, and again, we advocate paying it back every week, getting that balance down to zero every week so that it doesn't get away from you. If you want to, take advantage of the points, that's awesome. Please use the points. There's all kinds of statistics on the number of benefits that people have paid for that they don't get the reimbursement for. Well, then don't pay for a credit card where you're not actually going to use the points. So use the points or the cash back or whatever that is. The other thing is that with a credit card, when we focus on the fact that I am going to get money back or points back, it actually psychologically affects the things around us. And we then use that as a justification to purchase something that we can't afford. And so we'll say, oh, you know what? I'll put it on the credit card because I get the points back and I'll figure out how to pay for it later. And really deep down in our own minds and hearts, we know we have no idea how we're going to pay this back. Like we have no idea. But so the credit card is a tool that, yes, on the one hand, is convenient and allows us to function in our world here in North America. It also has a very dangerous side, much the same as a chainsaw, where you can find yourself in a place where you're seriously disabled, right? So.
Yes. So would you recommend people just have one?
That's all anybody really needs. And I would say just from a maybe a little side. One credit card for personal. If you're in business and you have business, one credit card for business. Again, it's a tool. We have one credit card that we only put the groceries on. That is how we manage our grocery budget. So that's all we put it on. We have another credit card that we use for other things. So the reality is how you use the tool, but you only need one credit card from a credit perspective, and most people only really need one credit card for their convenience perspective.
What about that? They had it in the States before we did. It's the debit credit.
Yeah.
What is that? We have them here now.
So Interact or debit Visa,
Yes.
more and more popular, allow for a lot of online. And again, because now we've moved to tap and we've moved to some of these other methods of payment, you can function much better with a debit Visa than you could even 3 or 4 years ago. So there are some situations where the debit Visa is not accepted, and so finding another form of payment.
So does that mean you're putting money on that debit Visa? Like you do that in advance, right? Or how does that work?
It's mostly used in the online where you can't use your debit card, right? So, in online before, not that long ago, if you wanted to use your debit or to connect your bank account, you could use a service like PayPal. And PayPal would, people accept PayPal for online purchases. You could connect that directly to your bank account, or you had to use a credit card because that was the method of payment. Now there are lots more options, and the Visa debit is one of them that directly connects to your bank account, but functions for the
purposes.
Yeah, for the purposes as a credit card for the supplier, for the person you're buying for.
Well, I'm thinking of what we have talked about, and we're coming to the end of the show, and we have a couple more questions, but we're not going to get to them today. But so we'll have to leave them for a different show. But I wrote an article a number of years ago, and we talk about it in the financial fitness seminar. It hurts to pay with cash. And there is just have that warning, like on some things are dangerous. And if you're not good with a credit card, there's no shame in it. Just admit it. And then, you can call us or listen to the financial fitness seminar on our YouTube channel. I'll have it in the show notes. There are ways that you need to function without a credit card. And there we can spend a whole show talking about why you shouldn't use one and lean on a credit card or lean on your credit line for help in your finances. But it hurts when we pay with cash. Literally, it physically registers in our brains in the pain center. But when we use credit cards, we don't feel a thing. Right. And sometimes we just have to feel something so that we recognize that that we have to pay it back.
Yeah.
So
pay attention to it. Again, that's the convenience of credit. We didn't really talk about that, but it's a significant caution.
Yes.
It's part of the tool that gets us in trouble.
And I'm going to have that in the show notes. So why don't you pray at the end?
Lord, just give us wisdom. We started by just hearing the words of James that say, when we come to you, you generously give us wisdom. So that's my simple prayer today is whether it's insurance, whether it's credit cards, whether it's questions that people may have, may we simply come to you and listen to you and hear what you say about these things. And you are so generous in giving the wisdom because of your great love for us. And we thank you in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Well, that covered a show. Those
Excellent.
2 questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So join us. I was just going to say, you know where to get the previous shows we've done on morethanenough.ca, chri.ca, and notmine.ca. And of course, your podcasting platform. And join us next week when we talk money.
Let's Talk Money is a division of More Than Enough Financial Fitness, where God is transforming hearts and bringing hope for today and freedom for tomorrow. For more information or to comment on today's show, please visit morethanenough.ca.